Hey guys, I'm Jax and this is my review for HotD. Now I don't have to tell you what that means, you know what those letters stand for. But just to be clear, just so there is no miscommunication between you and I of course mean that this is my review for this hot dim sim. One hot dimmy. Fried, filled with whatever's in a dim sim. I'm actually not sure. Is it vegetarian? Is it meat? I've never known, and quite frankly, I don't want to know. So how does this classic fish and chip hot dimmy stack up? Oh my god, that is so good. I'm giving that a 4.5 out of 5. So this week on HotD, we have a classic aftermath episode where everyone just kind of sits back from the horrors of the last episode that was a giant battle and just kind of takes a deep breath in and just goes, oh jeez. We get one of these episodes after pretty much every giant big battle in Game of Thrones, so it makes sense to have an aftermath quieter episode for HotD after their first big Dance of Dragons. But I have to be honest, I found this to be kind of a slog, kind of dull, and I'm not trying to be like, hey, all I want to see is a bunch of wonderful waltzes with wyverns. I don't just want to see action and blood and mayhem and chaos. I really, really like the dialogue scenes. I really like the character moments. I really like those quieter moments and the political minutirings of everything and all that. But I found this episode to just be really meandering. I found all of the conversations to be quite dull. Characters would start a scene and they're like, who's gonna be king? I'm like, well, it has to be Aemond. Like, who else would it be? And the scene ends and they're like, well, it's Aemond. And he's like, who else was it gonna be? And I'm like, oh, she doesn't want it to be Aemond. She wants it to be her, but they don't respect her because she's a woman. There's just like nothing to the scenes. And I just felt like every single scene was a bunch of characters having really dull, boring, obvious conversations. And I just feel like we're not getting the character stuff. I feel like there aren't moments where I'm like, ooh, now I love this character because of this thing that happened or this interesting dynamic that's happening. It was mostly just a bunch of boring characters standing around and being like, I got a dragon, do what I say, the phrase. I got a dragon, do what I say, the Brackens / the Blackwoods, whichever one you are. Who cares? Episode 3 felt the same, where it was just kind of dull, and this episode I felt like was the same, which is weird because the battle episode had 30 to 40 minutes of dialogue scenes driven by really interesting character moments and was really emotional at times and was really interesting. So it's like they know how to make the show good, and yet this season now there's been 2 full episodes that I found to just be like, shockingly dull. So the one thing of note that I found really interesting about this episode, but interesting in that way where I'm like, they just keep forgetting they put that other scene in season 1 in the show, is that the first scene is Kristen Cole and all the knights, they're parading the dragon head and they're like, look, we killed a dragon, we killed this dragon, and they're parading it like a celebration, like we won the battle, and then all the common folk, all the ordinary peasants and everybody are looking at the dragon and they're like, oh my god, I thought the dragon was some kind of god, I can't believe they killed it, it's a bad omen, I'm so scared, this isn't a celebration, this is horrifying. And once again, I am just left completely baffled by everyone's reaction. It makes absolutely no sense. It would make sense if one tiny little scene in season 1 hadn't happened. But it happened, because the old lady princess, Renee's or Rhaenyra's or whatever her name is, that old lady that died last week, busted out of the crypts or wherever she was hiding in episode 9 of season 1 and killed, let's say, minimum 400 peasants, but maximum, probably more realistic, like 2,000 innocent peasant common folk, and just killed all of them and then just flew off. And now that same dragon and woman are being paraded through the streets and all the peasants are like, oh, I'm horrified. I'm so disgusted that this dragon was killed. This is a bad omen. What are you talking about? Did you forget that this dragon killed like 1,000 of you for no reason? You should all be so happy that this one lady, this one old rich white lady and her murderous psychopathic dragon are dead. You should be celebrating. You should be dancing up and down. Justice for the common folk. But no, this show's pretending that scene just didn't happen. And I'm just left baffled and infuriated, and yeah, I'm at a loss, because it just like every single time she was on screen, they pretended it didn't happen, and now even in death, they're pretending she didn't do that thing. This should be a celebration for the common folk at King's Landing. It's not. It's in fact the complete opposite. I just can't get past it. I don't go to fish and chip shops often enough because it's so greasy, and afterwards you're like, oh, I can feel the food clinging onto my like lungs and gut, and like it's enjoyable to eat at the time, but afterwards you're like, that is so much yellow, greasy, oily, just it's a lot. But if you've saved yourself for a while and you just have one delicious HotD, Matt Daemon is like the best character, one of the most interesting characters, still just wandering about Harrenhal being like, oh, I've got spooky dreams, oh, I'm tripping out, I'm tripping balls, bro. It just feels so meandering and samey, and it's like, I guess this is kind of interesting that like he's telling people to go do horrific war crimes, and then they come back and they're like, they did horrific war crimes, and he's like, I don't remember saying that. I am tripping balls. He's high and he's tripping out and he's forgetting things and blacking out. I guess that's some kind of fun, but it's just so dour, and I'm just like at a loss as to why I should care about any of these people, because they're just not giving me reasons to care with moments and scenes. It's just a bunch of boring Targaryens standing about being like, you fight for me. And if I didn't have a pre-existing knowledge of things from Game of Thrones, it would just kind of mean nothing to me. I don't know, I was pretty disappointed by this episode, and I feel like episode 4 was so much better in every single way, in every single facet from the rest of the show. I was kind of hoping it was going to get better and better and better, but it feels like that was like a peak, and now we've fallen back down to the bottom of the mountain, and we're in some kind of horrible, boring, dull, uninspired, yet beautiful, oh my god, this show looks beautiful, valley. The one bit of the episode that I really did enjoy was right at the end. Budget, Daenerys and her son were like, hey, there's a bunch of bastard Targaryens running about, let's give them dragons so we can have a lot of different people riding dragons and we can fight the big dragon. I thought that was pretty exciting. I'm pretty intrigued to see where that goes. It also makes sense now why we keep seeing all those random other characters for like 3 minutes an episode where they're like, I'm some kind of Targaryen bastard, I'm just standing around not being important, maybe I'll come into the story later. And now we're like, oh cool, so they're going to be enlisted to fight with the dragons. That's all kind of intriguing. I really like the idea where they're like, well, the old Targaryens and Valyrians were all like, it's a blood bond between our bloodline and dragons. It's sacred. Is it? Is it sacred? Or are you just kind of just saying that? Like, are you like, yeah, no, we're the only ones that can bond with these dragons. Oh no, if you don't have our specific bloodline, you can't actually ride a dragon? Is that true? Or is it just kind of like a horse where you just gotta kind of like, I don't know, do whatever you do with a horse before you ride it. Like, pat it on the head? Is it like more, sorry, I don't know anything about horses. Let's start that again. Is it more like a hippogriff where you've got to like respect it and give it honor and bow to it? But if you do a Draco Malfoy, it won't let you ride it. But if Draco Malfoy had pulled a Harry Potter, he could have ridden it, rode it, whatever. It's like, I really like that. I think that's super interesting to be like, is it like some kind of sacred blood bond? Or is it just a thing that they've kind of gatekeeped? I don't know, that's really, really interesting to me. Overall, I thought this episode was super disappointing and just kind of boring. But, once again, just so beautiful. Man, do they make this show look so gorgeous. It is a beautifully gorgeous, dull experience, which is, I don't know how they make it so dull.